Hello, my name is Travis Calvert, and you're watching Every Guitar a Story. Welcome to the second episode of Every Guitar a Story. If you watched the first episode, I thank you. This is an idea I've had brewing for a while now, where I wanted to be able to just sit down and talk about one of my favorite things, guitars, and have discussions about guitars with some wonderful people I've been fortunate enough to meet over the years. Guitars and guitar playing has been a lifelong passion of mine, and has taken me places I never could have imagined and introduced me to some incredible people over the years. So, it's been this amazing journey where no matter how much you think you've learned or experienced, there's always more to the puzzle. There's always another way of looking at things. In the early days of my guitar playing, there were mainly two ways of playing. One, loud as fuck with heavy distortion, or two, something a little softer. Mainly the unplugged style, as we early MTV kids used to call it. In order to do that, it required an acoustic guitar, and once again, a trip to Ron's pawn shop was in order. Somewhere around 1990, as I recall, I walked in and picked out this. It's a Lyle F500 acoustic guitar, made for the discriminating musician. A little research will tell you that these were made in Japan at the Matsumoku factory, where they also made Aria, Univox, Washburn, Epiphone, and a whole lot of other brands. And it's pretty obvious from this headstock design here who they were attempting to copy when they made this one. Anyways, got a spruce top, rosewood side and back, rosewood fingerboard, standard pearl dot markers. It's a little smaller than your average dreadnought. It's not a full-size dreadnought, but, for what it is, it's not too bad. It's not a great guitar. Sounds a little dull to my ears, but for what it is and what it does, it served me well. A quick search shows that these go for about $300. Not a bad investment considering I paid about $80 for it some 30 years ago. Granted, this one's a little beat up, so it's worth a little less, but, this guitar marked a first for me. This is the first time I ever attempted to play and sing at the same time. We both lie silent and still in the dead of night. I wasn't very good at it, and so for decades I never attempted that feat in front of anyone. It took a long time to get to a point where I felt comfortable even trying. It wasn't until I moved to Reno in 2007 that I gave it a go, and even then it was mostly just a screeching warble. The folks I was playing music with were kind enough to allow me to attempt. Anyways, let's switch gears now and let's talk to somebody who really knows how to play guitar. This is Every Guitar a Story. This is the second episode, so thanks for coming on.
No problem.
This is Jasson Jess. For those of you that haven't met Jasson, he's a great guitar player, singer, screamer extraordinaire for a band called Black Crosses. He does a thing called Everything Sucks Fest, which he's been kind enough to invite us to a couple times, which is a pretty incredible thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm really sore, Travis.
Sore about what?
Oh, just being old. No, it's interesting. Like, I had this conversation like a couple weeks back about, playing music and playing guitar. And, I always think that it's funny because, like people will say, well, hey, like I was like watching your last show, people are like, well, this was the spark, that kind of, lit the fire. But with me, it was kind of like I was a really shy kid, grew up in a small country town. There wasn't much to do. You've met me before. I'm a little guy. I was really introverted at the time. But I always liked music, and my whole thing was like, the only way that I'm gonna meet chicks, mind you, this is way back when. The only way I'm gonna meet girls is if I kind of have if I have something, and back then, it wasn't like there was everybody in a band. Bands were few and far between back then. So, besides skateboarding and playing guitar, that was kind of my way to express myself and get out of that shy little bubble.
Yeah. So how old were you when you started playing guitar?
Well, originally when I first started playing, like I went to when I was in high school, when I was in elementary school, I played trumpet and saxophone. I wanted to play drums at the time, but like, my school had maybe like 2 snare drums and they'd given those to like the more popular kids. So I got stuck with like a saxophone. And then, like I said, I lived on a farm. We had this long ass driveway, and lugging that saxophone down that driveway became a hindrance. So I switched to trumpet. And then anyways, that was kind of my, foray into music for the time being. And then I want to say I was probably when I first started playing music, I was singing in a punk band. But then at the same time, I kind of felt like, and I still kind of I mean, it depends on the band. I kind of felt like it was silly just for me to be up there singing. I wanted to do something more than that. So some friend gave me a really old, like 1960s K, like hollow bodied bass. And so I tinkered on that for a bit. And then a friend's dad sold me like an Ibanez bass. This is like the late 80s, when all of us were kind of trying to figure out what the hell we were doing, so it was kind of like a heavy metal type bass. I played that for a couple years, played in a couple bands. And then I was just like, I kind of felt like I had done everything that I was going to do as far as bass at the time, and then I picked up guitar. I picked up guitar, honestly, like started playing guitar when I was, let me think, this would have been around 23, 24.
Yeah.
So I haven't played guitar for a long time. But, with that being said, I've kind of set out to master it, the way that I wanted to. Like my guitar heroes were like, Johnny Thunders and Johnny Ramone and like Greg Ginn from Black Flag. I never set out to want to be like Eddie Van Halen or,
Right.
or, like Richie Blackmore or anything like that. So I've kind of like, with that being said, I've kind of boxed myself into a corner as far as like what my, my limitations and what my, I guess kind of what I can play. I'm kind of like set in stone, and I really don't want to push it any further than I kind of have. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
Sure, man. 3 chords is enough to get it done.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll throw in a 4th just to fuck with people, but.
Yeah. So, you mentioned you started playing in bands pretty young. How many bands have you been in? Give us a short rundown of the bands you've been in.
Oh, well, the first band I was in was a band called Dr. Abortion and the Coat Hanger Kids. So
Nice.
I was probably like 15 or 16, it's just a little skate punk band. The songs were very short, maybe 15, 30 seconds, kind of like a la DRI and awful shit like that. After that, like the next band was called Dancing for a Fix. They were kind of like a Sonic Youth, Nirvana-esque kind of band. And little bands, here and there trying to get shit together. But like, as far as Sacramento, like bands in Sacramento that I've been a part of, like 3. There's been 3, like, I guess kind of sort of big Sac bands. The first would be a band called Crawl Space that I started in 98. Did that for a couple years, took a break, started Drastic Actions. And that was like, 14, 15 years ago, did that for a couple years, broke up for a bit, reunited, took a break, because of marriage and kids and work and all that.
Yeah.
And then, we've been doing the Black Crosses thing for like the last 5 years.
Cool.
Almost 5 years. Yeah.
Right on.
Kind of don't really count a lot of those other bands because it was kind of like, I mean, I didn't know anything about, we didn't tune our guitars, we didn't care about, how, back then we're all playing through like, PV Bandit amps and, whatever the hell we could find. We didn't know tone. We didn't care tone. We just wanted to be loud and irritating, which is still kind of my thing. I like to be loud and irritating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And I try to, back then playing music too, I really wasn't listening to much other than, just metal or punk. I've always liked different types of music, but I never drew any inspirations for my songs, from, like you and I have talked, like Graham Parsons, the Flying Burrito Brothers, the Byrds, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, like all those bands that like, when you and I were kind of growing up, you had all these punk folks were like, the Eagles are awful, or, Poco is awful, or, just that country shit, that twangy shit. But I mean, I listen to far more other music than like punk. I mean, it's just easy for me to write. It's kind of like a no-brainer.
Sure. What was your first guitar?
So my first guitar that I actually bought was, I mean, Jen Scafidi, right?
Yeah.
The Dan Electro that she plays, that kind of baby blue power, that was my first guitar.
Oh, wow.
So, again, when I first started playing, I didn't know shit about tuning it. Playing those guitars, those are great for what Jen does, but as far as like taking that thing out on tour, they don't last very long.
Yeah.
So I tinkered around on that Dan Electro for, probably about a year. And then after that, I switched up to, I had a Nashville Telly.
Okay.
And I also had a Gibson SG. In that period of time, like during Crawl Space, I mean, it kind of seemed like, whenever I went to a music store, I was buying another guitar.
Yeah.
And they would just sit in my closet. I would have, I had like Strat, a Telecaster, I had a Flying V, all that shit that, you need to have when you're younger. It's not that you want to have it, you need it. You need it. But I remember I bought that Dan Electro. I went into this, there used to be this small music shop here in Sacramento called Profound Sound. And the owner was, I mean, he was awful, but it was the only place where you could get kind of off the wall shit, and I saw that Dan Electro and I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like, kind of like a country-ish guitar, had the two, like, I guess they'd be lipstick pickups, and, but like I said, I mean, it didn't last very long. The neck cracked, those bridges just pop right off,
Yeah.
I think the nut is made out of, plastic.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, what Jen uses it for is great, but trying to tour all around with that thing in a gig bag, not a case, is not the way to go about it.
How many guitars do you own currently?
Right now, I've just got two.
Yeah.
I've got a 1970s Fender Ventera Tele Custom that I have over here.
Do you have it nearby? Can you grab it? Show us.
So this is what I'm playing on right
Oh yeah, right on.
now. A lot of people, try and stray away from maple necks, but to me, there's something really sexy about a maple neck.
Yeah, every Telecaster should be a maple neck.
I've heard people say, that these maple necks are too bright. This is definitely a thicker neck than, say, like, my SG that I was playing on, but my hands have adapted to it. They've got like the bullet for the truss rod.
Yep.
It's got the humbucker, so it's kind of like the closest I can get to a Gibson without playing a Gibson.
Yeah.
And I mean, you and I both know, how the necks usually last on those Gibsons. If you set them up the wrong way, they fall and, they're donezo.
Yeah.
But I haven't had this very long. I'd kind of been looking around for one for quite some time. There was some guy on, I think it was on Facebook Marketplace, that he had some nerve damage or something to his hand, and he had only played it maybe once or twice. And I mean, it was $500. So Steven and I drove to, halfway to the Bay Area and picked it up.
Sure.
So, I mean, this is kind of what I'm rocking now, and I'm pretty stoked on it. I have my buddy Andy Harrison, who lives in Carson City. He's working on like a distressed butterscotch Telly for me right now. It's a Squire, but he's roughing it all up, kind of making it look road edge, or, road war. And then I'm going to throw some Lawlers in there and just call it good.
Cool.
But yeah.
So the one you have now, how new is that? Is that pretty recent?
I bought it maybe a year ago. I'm not quite sure, as far as how old it is. If I was to guess, it's maybe 3 years old tops. Yeah. There wasn't a ding on it.
So it's all pretty much stock then?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nothing modified?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't change anything. It's kind of funny because, I always end up buying guitars that have two like pickups, but I always strictly play through that bridge pickup.
Yeah, neck pickups are for quitters.
Right. So it's kind of like, there's another Ventera that I've been looking at. It's black. It's got a maple neck. It has the one humbucker actually in the neck, and the standard telly down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Like the next thing that I actually purchase will probably be one of those. And of course, I'll swap out that bridge pickup for something that's, a little bit beefier, since that's what I play out of. But
yeah.
I mean, I'm really not into, to modifying shit. I don't, I kind of like, once I find that tone, whatever it is, I can be set on that for a couple of years. And then every once in a while, it kind of seems like I get to a point where I'm chasing a sound. I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've kind of leveled out on what I'm getting out of this. And then I might switch up to another pedal or, another guitar or something like that. But, I mean, everything is pretty much stock, standard tuning. The only time I'm playing like with a capo is if I'm at home and I'm trying to write something. All of my writing happens at home, on an acoustic. That's how it's been for like, over 25 years.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I really don't, I don't modify shit. I don't, I see all these guys, building their own pedals or, putting mods in their amps. And honestly, I mean, my hearing is so awful that I don't think I could really fucking pick out what's what, I'd be lying if I could go, oh yeah, hey. But I can't.
Yeah. I know I had a hearing test done a couple years ago, and I've got some hearing loss right around 4K, which I keep looking for brighter and brighter guitars to fill in that notch, I suppose.
Right. Well, it's funny, my girlfriend and I, we were talking about it last night, and I said, I remember, I used to go to a show. Like, I remember I saw the Queers a couple of years back, and I mean, I'm right in front of Joe Queer. He's got his Marshall and his orange amp. I mean, right in front of me, and I'm up front. I've got my son at the time who's like maybe 8 years old. I mean, the monitors for the vocals are right, in this ear. His amp is in this ear. And most people, their ears are going to ring after the fact, but nothing. It's like these guys here at practice, they're wearing earplugs. I don't know. I don't bother. Maybe it's just part of me being ridiculous or whatever. But it's like, I've tried earplugs to like try and cut some of the high end out. But for, it's like I was telling, my girlfriend, I'm like, I need to feel it. I need to hear it. And for me to stuff something into my ear to try and suppress kind of any of that sound. And again, maybe I'm just making excuses, but it just makes more sense for me to like hear it and feel it and, not have something blocking it.
You need to get a hold of Tim Blake. He's an ear specialist here in Reno, plays in a lot of bands, and he makes custom molded earpieces that are really good.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you should get a hold of him. Because once you lose your hearing, man, it doesn't come back.
Right. Well, you know how it is, just like I do. We get older, and not just your hearing, but your vision too, right? It's like, like my eyes are straining a little bit. And then the next year, you're like, my eyes are straining a little bit more. It's like my girlfriend will stick something in front of my face, like a foot back. And I'm like, you need to back that up about like another foot, so I can kind of see what's going on. But yeah, I know. Yeah. There's at my age, there's a lot of things that I shouldn't do, but
getting old sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to guitars. I know at one time you had a guitar with an Evertune bridge. Tell me about that. I was always curious about those.
Travis, like it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. However, if it wouldn't work for you. And the reason why it wouldn't work for you is, I've seen you play leads. It's kind of like, especially if you're bending notes,
mm-hmm.
it's almost like you'll get to a point where the note just breaks. Like if you were to try and play like, Johnny Thunders and you're just doing one of his like, it's like as soon as you kind of get into a bend, it kills it.
Wow.
Because the mechanism in that Evertune just tries to track it back to the fact of like, because, you know, as you're pulling on those strings, your guitar automatically wants to go out of tune.
Yeah.
So, but that Evertune, it's, you know, it's got, and I think you and I talked about this when we were in Reno one night, but again, it's a novel idea. I think if you were just playing, if you weren't bending strings whatsoever, or I mean, if you are bending strings, but you get to a point where you're not really getting into that string.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Otherwise, I ended up selling that guitar just because of the fact that it almost seemed like it was a hindrance. You couldn't really do much to it, you know. And it's like, as far as like, you know, as far as tuning, and you know, you have your tuning keys up top. But then with the, you know, the Evertune, you know, you'd have the mechanism down here. You'd have to adjust all your tuning down here with an Allen key. So it's like, you know, say for example, you were the type of person that, you know, wanted to play drop D tuning and you only had one guitar. You know, it's like, it's going to take you 15, 20 minutes to fucking tune it down to D, you know, or, you know, a half a step or a full step or whatever the hell you're wanting to do. But it's like, I mean, those guitars are perfect for people who play like metal, you know.
Yeah.
I know that the guitar player for like Good Riddance uses them, but he doesn't play a lot of leads.
Yeah, I know the first time I saw one was Captain Sensible was playing one. And I was like, what is that thing? What? So I did a little research and I'm like, I'd be interested to see what those actually work like. But if you say that you can't do too much bending, I don't know.
No, and that's the thing, like I said, and obviously, you know, the higher, lower, whatever, the higher you get up on the neck, you know, like I said, those notes are just, they're dying. It's kind of like a noise gate pedal. A noise gate pedal is great, right? But if you kind of like to work off of that feedback or whatever, you know, you're killing that signal. It's kind of the same kind of shit, you know, where you're kind of boxed into what you can do. I mean, I think like if you were using it for like a recording situation, and maybe you were using that for, you know, like rhythm versus like your leads, that's different. But like I said, to me, it became a hassle. It just that guitar, you know, that was a Les Paul. I mean, it was really fucking heavy. It was like a 14-pound guitar. I would have tuning issues with it anyways, even though I had the Evertune, you know. So it was kind of like in my mind, I thought, oh shit, set it and go, right?
Yeah.
But again, it just became a point to like, it was, you know, you're just, you know, you're handcuffed to it. And I mean, I kind of like the discord of having to tune your shit, you know, if you have to, you know, you just throw a little, you know, tuner up on the head of your guitar or tuning pedal, whatever it is that you use, and just go from there. But it's kind of, and at the same time, Travis, it's like, if you wanted to throw one of those Evertunes on like that Rickenbacker behind you, right? They've got to cut like a decent section out of the body, you know, for the Evertune. You know, they move the bridge. So they end up having to plug the holes where the old bridge was, you know, which with mine, they did a really shitty job of putting the holes back in where they drilled the holes out. It just, once I got it back, I kind of like already had a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh no.
And then I think that like I've seen like their website, they've got like some tellies, like they have like the guitar player for Slipknot has like his own Telecaster. They've got an Evertune version of that. They sell like a lot of ESPs, you know, off of that website, shit like that, you know, like metalish kind of guitars.
Yeah.
But for stuff that like, you know, you play on, or like, you know, an average person plays on, I mean, they're going to take a big chunk of your guitar out just to put that system in. And it's not fucking cheap. It's like anywhere between $400 and $600.
Sure.
Which, I mean, you could buy a Strat or, you know, whatever at that, you know, at that cost.
Yeah, for sure. Well, live and learn, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, again, I thought it would be a little bit different than it was. Kind of thought it would be like a godsend, you know, you just set your shit up and go. But again, at the same time, between the issues with the tuning and the fact that that guitar was so damn heavy.
Yeah, that's like half your body weight.
Right. And me being small and working construction, it's like at the end of the day, after all that, I don't want to, carry this, 14, 15-pound guitar on stage and try and move around. It's just not happening.
Yeah. What gauge strings do you use?
Oh, Jesus. I just play super slinkies. Just throw those on. I think those are like 1056s or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, I see all these videos of like guys on, YouTube, like, oh, these are the strings I play because they just sound great. Like with me, I remember going into like a guitar shop and seeing like, the pink super slinkies. And I was like, oh, I'll try those. It's not like I play leads or anything. I'm like, oh, well, I'll just wind these up as tight as I can. At the time when you're first learning how to put strings on your guitar, you're like just tweaking it, bang, But I've always played super slinkies. I've never tried anything different. I mean, by all means, if somebody gave me a pack of strings, I would throw them on there.
Yeah.
I'm not that particular. I'm more particular about like the picks I use, which are these. There's little gray Dunlops, with the grippers on.
Oh yeah, the grippers. Those are cool. Yeah.
And these are 60s. It's like if I tried to use like an actual hard pick, it's not happening because of the way that I play.
Yeah. I know you mentioned pretty much you do standard tuning. Do you ever mess with alternate tunings at all?
If I'm at home and I'm like writing, I will, like, you're talking about alternate tunings, it's like you listen to like a lot of stuff like Joni Mitchell, where you're like, what the hell is she like? How is she even playing that? Just some open tunings, sometimes down a step, sometimes, down like a half a step, but usually it all just circles back to just writing in standard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bands out there, that have made like a living off of playing in like drop D or like a full step down. And I'm just like, for me, I would much rather, I'd rather use my fingers than just kind of,
Yeah.
It's like, you see, the Melvins, Buzz is like, that's his thing. And that's great. He's got it all dialed in, but like, I try and make sense of that shit. I'm like, I don't understand it whatsoever.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And I mean, I've never, as far as pedals go too, it's like, I was telling Steven and Tony, I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to get a little weird. Right now, all I'm playing through as far as pedals is I just picked up a Rat distortion pedal, like a reissue from the 70s. I'm playing through like a fuzz. I might pick up like a chorus or something like that, or an overdrive, but that's it. I mean, I don't really go too crazy on things.
Sure. So over the years, you've had a lot of different guitars. What's the holy grail of guitars? If you could have any guitar, what would it be?
Oh, wow. If I could have any guitar, and I probably would not take it out at all and ever play it would probably just sit at my house, would probably be like a Gretsch White Falcon.
Yeah.
Or like a Rickenbacker 360.
Yeah.
Those would just stay at my house just so I could say, hey, I have this guitar, now.
Yeah.
But again, it's like the way that I play and as much as I play, trying to take that shit out would be just as
not practical. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you have any guitars that got away, the ones that you wished you hadn't sold?
Oh, well, there's one that got away, and it honestly hurt me more than getting divorced. And so at a 1972 Walnut Gibson SG, and we played, this is when I had my band Drastic Actions, and we played a show in Sacramento. We were playing with the Swinging Utters. And those guys at the time liked to party, and we liked to party. And there's a spot in the back of the bar where you set your gear. Well, long story short, my guitar and my bass player's guitar ended up walking out of the club. Oh, and man, that fucking broke my heart.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like I wrote so much on that guitar. That guitar had been through so much with me. I mean, it was 1972, the same year I was born. I mean, it was gorgeous. It was the perfect weight. The binding was great. And it just That it was it, and like looking in pawn shops for it. I'm like, yeah, I was kind of like, whoever took it doesn't know what they got. They just took this guitar just to take it. My bass player ended up finding his guitar in like a pawn shop like 6 or 8 months later on, but I never saw that guitar again.
Oh man, that sucks.
Yeah. And it's like, so after that, I was kind of like, my whole thing was like, all right, play the show, load out. Play the show, load out. Don't stash your shit in the club. Like if you have the chance to get your shit outside into the car, get it out into the car, and make sure that you have somebody watching your stuff.
Yeah.
I always see all these, you see all these stories. There'll be like some guys, like there was a guy up here in Sacramento not too long ago. He had a Buck Owens, like one of those Buck Owens red, white, blue Telecasters from the 70s. And he was like, this is my pride and joy. It was stole out of my car. I'm like, out of your fucking car? Like, dude, like, no, like you let that shit in your car. But you hear about that all the time, people getting their trailers stolen or I mean, that's the thing. If you have something that you care about, you got to keep an eye on it, or have somebody that you trust keep an eye on it. Cause I mean, these guitars, you've been playing just as long as I have, maybe longer. And that this shit just gets more expensive after every single year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a special place in hell for people who steal music gear.
Oh, absolutely.
Amplifiers. What are you playing through right now?
Right now I'm playing through a 1965 reissue. It's a Fender Twin. Picked that up for a fantastic price. There was some guy lived up in Volcano who I think he bought way more amp than he needed, And again, it was just with everything that's kind of going on right now in the world, it was the perfect. It was perfect. It was just there, and I had played through a 71, a couple of years back and ended up having to sell it. So when this one came available, I was like, I just jumped at the chance.
Yeah.
And like I was telling you, like, a week or so ago, I'm like, I'm so crazy that I want to buy another one just to have another one, run one on one side and one on the other.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But I don't know. It all depends on money and how ridiculous I'm feeling or what else I want to spend my money on at the time. But like I said, shit isn't cheap. What we do is not cheap.
No.
Unfortunately.
No.
But, like we have Tony's drum set over here. This fool spent like probably over $4,000 on a drum set, and I'm not a drummer, so I don't know the difference. But, it's kind of like I was saying earlier on, when you first start, you're playing maybe on like a line 6 or like a, a little shitty solid state amp, and you think you're just so bitching, because you have it cranked as loud as possible. But, you look back, I watched your video last night where you were playing, you had that, like that weird metal, like almost Explorer type guitar you were playing through.
Yeah.
And I was listening to your, like your little lead or whatever you were playing.
Yeah.
Like at the time, I'm sure you thought that was cool as fuck, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You were like on top of the world. Nobody could fucking touch you.
Yeah. I'd had that guitar for 2 weeks. I'd never played guitar before. I picked up a guitar. I didn't know what I was doing. I just like cranked the strings until I'm like, oh, that sounds like something I recognize. And listening back, I'm like, oh yeah, you just tuned it to a 5th. You've got a power chord there. Just slide your finger up and down.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just wanking around, but it was fun.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of the same thing with me. I'm like, I remember like talking to a friend of mine who played guitar at the time. And I'm like, how do you know when the guitar is in tune? And he's like, look at it this way. He's like, so if you hit the string and it sounds like it's got a wave to it, it's not in tune. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I'm like, dong. I'm like, okay. So for the longest time, like tuning to me, fuck, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I would try using like a digital tuner, try using this. And I'm like, at the time, like being so dumb trying to figure, I'm like, okay, well, is it supposed to be red? Is it supposed to be green? What's going on here?
Yeah. When I started, I had a pitch pipe, like the little thing you'd blow into. And that's how you had to tune your guitar to that. And kids these days, they don't know how easy they got it, man.
Well, it's just like, you had Gibson a couple of years ago come out with those, the guitars with like the robotic tuners.
Yeah.
I'm like, to me, it's. I was talking to somebody not too long ago. It's like I like to do this little dance where it's like I kind of like the idea of sometimes you're falling out of tune because I don't think the music that we're playing it's supposed to be perfect. Like you hear a lot of these bands, and they record and it just sounds so. I mean, shit, you can tell like all of those Fat Records bands are like, oh, they're playing on, Mesa Boogie triple rectifiers. Like everybody, It's that sound, right? There's no room for error. They're not getting it, Like you hear or listen to, you see some of those videos of like Johnny Thunders where you're just like, this guy's fucked up and he's way the fuck out of tune. But the guy was like, he was living it.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like Wayne Kramer from the MC5, same shit.
Yeah.
You're just like, he is fucking just getting it.
Yep.
Like to a normal person, they're like, oh, that's kind of garbage. He's falling out of tune. I'm like, oh yeah, I love it.
Oh, like the Replacements live at Maxwell's. Westerberg's guitar is so out of tune, but it's so incredible that he's still holding it together. It sounds so good.
Well, and then like trying to play like, Black Diamond by Kiss, it's just like, you're like, oh, what the fuck is, but at the same time, it's like to be there in that moment, must have been, great. I've seen a lot of bands that later on became like big bands. And I remember seeing Hole. I remember seeing Nirvana. A lot of people love Nirvana. They never really did much for me.
Yeah.
You tell people that and they're like, what, are you out of your fucking mind? You got to see Kurt Cobain? I'm like, saw Kurt Cobain like 4 or 5 times. And I'm like, if you wanted to see like, my whole thing is like, you have these bands like that everybody just thinks are so great. Like I would tell you, Travis, I think the worst band, let's have this conversation. The worst big band that I've ever seen live was the Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh yeah.
How about you? What's the worst big mainstream like rockish band that you saw that was just complete?
It's gonna break my heart to admit this, but probably one of the worst shows I ever saw was the Ravenettes, who I absolutely love and adore. They're fantastic. Their albums are just gold. But it was like the most boring show. Like their drummer was playing to a click and he was just so bored. He was completely checked out. And there was just like no dynamics to it, and it was just kind of flat, and it was so boring. It was sad.
Yeah. I would say like one of the best. So like one of the best, like, I guess guitar heroes that I saw, and this was like 25 years ago, was Dick Dale here in Sacramento.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that dude was just like, he was, not only was he like, and of course I could never play like that, but he was just on. The guy was just there. He was giving it his all. He's working the crowd. The guy was just like, he was just getting it. And at the time, he's probably mid 70s, early 70s. But that guy just like, I like to see a lot of those kind of guitar players, and I'm like, I think it's really awesome that a lot of those people can play like that. Like John, I don't know if you've ever listened or like seen anything by like John Five from like, White Zombie, Rob Zombie, or like, Marilyn Manson. That guy, you want to talk about like chicken picking, that guy can play some country.
Yeah.
But as far as like, I would never want to play like that. I would never even like attempt to try and play like that.
Yeah.
It's just it's not my thing. But also, I didn't hear like, Van Halen when I was a kid. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that, or he was great at what he did. But it was never my thing.
Sure.
Angus Young was more my thing.
Yep.
Or like Black Sabbath was more, like my thing.
Yeah, when I started out too, it was all about the riff. Like I could care less about soloing when I started.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I kind of feel like as far as like somebody that's a solo player, you kind of got to know when it's too much, because you go to like a Guitar Center and there's just a dude that's like noodling and noodling and noodling.
Yeah. And 30 seconds of that and you want to take his head off.
Yeah. You're like, okay, bro, got it. That's great.
Yeah.
but it's never, again, that's never been my thing. It's never even, I just, for me to try and attempt to either play like that or act like I could play like that would just be, it'd be ridiculous. It's not me.
Yeah.
Like, just like, I remember playing in this band and they wanted me to, I can't remember what the hell they were asking me to do. They wanted me to do something was definitely not Jasson. I'm like, dude, that's not how I play. I don't play like that. I don't want to play like that. I've done this long enough that, I have no, again, it's just not me. There's no point to it.
As in somebody told you to alternate pick rather than to do downstrokes all the time?
Well, here's the thing. I don't downstroke. I play really fucking sloppy like this. That's it. I've tried to just be like, but I don't know if it's because of my age. I don't know if it's because of the type of work I do. But like I said, if I attempt to try and play without this pick and I use a harder pick, my wrist starts to cramp up. My hand starts to cramp up.
Yeah.
It's like when we had Lloyd in the band, Lloyd was very like downstrokey. And like I said, the way that I play is like, like Lloyd was the mashed potatoes and I was like the gravy that covered all of that other shit, just by slop, slop, slop.
Yeah.
There's definitely no, I'm not a technical player. I just want to get in there and get the job done and like, just sing and just play. And if it sounds good, it sounds good. And if it doesn't, well, I'm still going to do it, because I don't know any better at this point.
Right on. So any chance you could plug in and play something for us?
All right, let's see. Hold on a second.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, I can't wait till we can sit down and do this again in person.
Oh, yeah, man. That would be great. Give me just a second. Are you still playing through that Supro?
Yeah, I am.
What's the wattage on that? Is it like 20 or?
It's like 24 watts Class A. And I dig it, but I kind of miss the Vox too.
Yeah, you were playing what like an AC30?
Yeah.
See, I had an AC32 and like it, again, like there's a fine line between loud and too loud.
Yeah.
Like I remember talking to you about we were trying to set up a show and you're like, dude, you guys are just too fucking loud.
Yeah.
And it's like we are too fucking loud, but we've dialed back. Like I said, I'm more comfortable playing through like a nice loud combo than trying to drag a fucking half stack around. It's like I think a half stack is cool for like looks and shit like that.
Yeah.
But when you've got to lug that shit up a fucking flight of stairs, or forget it.
Yeah, no way.
So it's you said 22 watts?
Yeah, something like that.
Does that is it just a clean channel or does it have a dirty channel too?
No, it's got one channel and it's got like 2 stages of gain that you can dial in. So it's got stage 1, stage 2, dial those in, then you got your bass treble. It's got reverb and a built-in tremolo.
Is that like a reissue or is it?
Yeah, it's totally, it's a, well, I think it's the Black Magic, and supposedly they designed it after the one that Jimmy Page used on the first Zeppelin album.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, and that's another thing, we're talking about amps. There are a lot of people that, that swear by Marshalls, right?
Yeah.
I've never had good luck with Marshalls.
Really?
Ever. When Lloyd was in the band, or even like a couple of years back, I had a JCM 800. I wasn't happy with it. I kind of felt like, hey, I've got this amp that everybody says is supposed to sound rad and it looks really cool, but as far as the way that I want it to sound, it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I mean, I love Fender Twins. Before the Twin, it was like Hot Rod, Fender Hot Rod DeVille's.
Yeah, those are good.
even before that, it was like I had some like, when I first started playing guitar, I was playing through like a Fender Rock Pro, like solid state. Like everybody in Sacramento that was playing punk, that's what they were playing through.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, well, I'll buy one and see how it sounds. And again, I was fairly new at guitar. I didn't know any better. Just crank that shit. The gain sound, it sounded like I was playing through like a can. But, I mean, now knowing, what tube amps do and what you can and cannot do, and I like that I can kind of get my sound the way that I want to by either adding or subtracting a pedal, or just cranking up the gain, or whatever. I mean, I am playing through a tiny bit of vibrato, but not enough to make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, for what I got it for, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of amplifiers, I have one that got away. I had a Sovtek MiG 100. And that thing was built like a tank, just loud as hell. But man, that thing sounded so good when you had it dialed in.
Yeah, I remember there was somebody in Sacramento years ago, they were playing through one of those. And I remember I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's a fucking Russian amp.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is, that's kind of cool looking. It's kind of like a play on like a Marshall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember carrying that thing. I'm like, this thing is fucking heavy as hell.
Yep.
It's like, it almost like those amps just looked evil without, without too much,
Yeah.
And then, of course they still make tubes, but you can't really find those. Like you'll see like those MiG 50s every once in a while.
Yeah.
But so that was the one that got away, huh?
Yep.
How about with you, like guitar that got away?
Oh, I've kept most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about a couple guitars that got away, but I'm not really too sad they got away.
Oh, okay.
It was that period in the late 80s where everybody thought they had to have a thin neck because you could play fast like a shredder.
Yeah.
So it'd be these ultra thin necks, and I'm like, I thought it was cool at the time. I didn't realize that if you want to get better at guitar, the only thing that's going to make you better is practicing.
And that's it. I mean, that's it. It's funny because like with me, like I'll go through periods where I don't touch my guitar for like a month or two.
Yeah.
And then like just one day I'll sit down, I'll write one part, and then I'll have like 2 or 3 songs down. But I've never been one of those people that I've like, if you try to put me in a room, you hear all these bands that like, oh, they're writing this whole album in the studio, right? I can't do that shit.
Yeah.
Like to have somebody leering over me, like, okay, well, what do you got? All right, well, what do you got? It's like, I can't, I don't think I could deal with that kind of pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have some engineer, some, producer that's like, well, that sounds like shit. Try this. It's like, well, you asked me what I had.
Yeah.
So my question to you is like, as far as this pandemic bullshit, what do you see as far as the soonest that we're going to be playing shows, like safely playing shows?
I know there's at least one venue in town that's starting to book stuff starting in July, and I'm guessing probably will start opening back up in July.
Outside or inside?
Probably inside. But it's hard to say what's going to happen, and it'll probably be at least another year before things are back to any sort of normal.
Right. Yeah, our last show that we played was a year ago tomorrow. We played Skate Jam up in Reno.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it seems like that shit was just yesterday. Like I was talking to my girlfriend, there's all of this stuff that's happened over the course of like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it was, it seems like it was just yesterday.
Yeah.
I had all of those shows that were booked. I had Everything Sucks Fest booked, and like we were going to do one in Pacifica. I think you guys were playing one of them, right? Pacifica, SAC, and then we were going to do one in Reno.
Yeah.
In Carson City at the brewery.
Yeah.
And then, like one would get canceled, and then another one, and then it was just like snowballed, and the next thing I knew, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like, at first, we were all like, well, this is just some fraud. This is just some bullshit that's going to blow over. But like, it's apparent that, I mean, people will ask me too. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, but as a father and, as somebody who books a lot of shows, I don't want to book something and have it end up being an issue where, something happens, somebody's sick because they came to one of my shows. I don't want to have that on my conscience. So I would much rather, I don't want to play until I know that it's all good to play, you know, even if that means playing outside. I don't want to play unless I know that it's, I mean, it's like people going on vacations, and having to wear masks. It's kind of like, I'm going to wait until everything is all good and I don't have to wear a fucking mask so I can get out and do whatever.
Do you have anything happening over in Sacramento where people are trying to do stuff outdoors yet? Or
so there's a guy in Sacramento called he runs kind of like this group that gives like free marijuana to vets and people in need. And this was in like, I want to say this was like last summer.
Yeah.
He wanted us to play. And I was like, well, let me think about it. And then, I thought about it for like a day or two and I was just like, yeah, dude, I'm not cool with that. I don't feel like that's a safe option right now. But no, right now, I mean, everybody's pretty much, shit is pretty much buttoned up.
Yeah.
I mean, you will drive by like restaurants that that are supposed to be closed. You'll see people fucking eating inside.
Yeah.
Where I work up in El Dorado Hills, which is kind of up, like if you're going up towards Tahoe, I mean, none of those people up there are wearing masks, period.
Sure. Yeah.
So, with that being said, I kind of felt like, COVID was chasing me. Like I went to New Orleans a year ago today. Like I said, I just felt like it was chasing me, and like the work that I do, I'm in apartments, I'm in people's houses every day, all day. So I'm wearing a mask and gloves all day. I just got, the first shot Friday, which I mean, it's a doozy. Like, your joints hurt. This arm hurts like fucking hell. But if it means that I can get out and play music and do the shit that I want to do, fuck, give me a couple more shots,
Right?
Yeah, I'm just waiting my turn.
Well, and it'll happen, like it almost seems like that's the thing, like, I don't know how it is up there, but like here it's all by county. So you might have, like there was some girl that works as a fucking cashier at like CVS that got one. And I'm like, what the fuck? You work like 2 days a week and you're getting a vaccine, and then like Tony's mom, she's in her 70s. She just got her first shot yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like, it shouldn't be the struggle for people who want to get help to get help.
Right.
But it's just this. I mean, I was the last person that would ever want to line up and get a flu shot. I think I've had a flu shot once.
Yeah.
But with like I said, with all of this shit, I mean, I just want to play. And I want to get back to as close to normal as possible,
Yeah, I hear you.
It's cool practicing with these guys, but, to not be like out there and like talking to people, like I haven't seen you in over a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to communicate like this way. And I guess this is as good as it gets for the time being, but, it's going to be really cool to be able to like hug people and fucking talk to people and, just kind of get back to it. It's like, I was telling my girlfriend, I'm like, it's like sex with a condom, or like sex with a couple condoms. There's this big block in between you and everything else that you want to do. Anything that you would normally want to do to like relax, like fuck getting like a pedicure or a manicure or a massage or going on a vacation, or all of that stuff that we would normally sink into to relax. That shit's all been taken. So I mean, I've got to the understanding lately that, well, this is as good as it gets for the time being, and I'm okay with that for the time being.
Right.
Because as a dad, I've got to make sure that my kids are safe, or that I'm safe, or that my friends are safe. But it definitely fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. Like I said, especially when you've put so much work into booking all of these shows and then they're just gone.
Yeah.
It's like, not only did I feel like I was letting the guys in my band down, but I'm letting all of these other people down that wanted to play these shows, and now there's nothing. Not that I'm responsible for it, but it's like, it just sucks. Because again, you want to hang out and talk to these people you haven't seen or talked to, and that shit's all for naught now.
Yep. Well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I just hope that light is sooner than later,
Yeah.
But again,
Totally.
as long as it's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I miss you, Jasson.
Miss you too, dude.
I can't wait. It's gonna happen soon.
I hope so. Like, for me, like weekends, it's like, I might go to a brewery with a girlfriend. That's getting out, for the time being. But I mean, fuck, I miss Reno. I miss like Pacifica. I miss just being able to do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to play LA this weekend? Let's go. Can't do that shit. So It is what it is. I know that sounds hokey, but we're just kind of fucking stuck for the time being.
Yep. I guess you just have to write more music.
Yeah. Trying.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I don't, going through a divorce and like all this pandemic stuff, there's like, it has to hit me, again, I can't just sit down and force it.
Yeah.
So I've been writing more songs and reworking lyrics and whatnot, but it's like, I definitely haven't been as productive as I would have liked to have been.
Yeah. Same. I mean, with all this time on our hands, you think it would be easy to write, but it puts you in a strange headspace psychically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like in theory, you would like think like, oh, I have all this time. I could write 2 or 3 albums and but it's like everybody's going through their own like mental shit. Right.
Yeah.
So you're like, fuck, I don't have the patience to like just sit down and, and then there's the other side where you're like, why in the fuck am I going to work on a bunch of songs? Because I don't get to perform those songs for anybody right now.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'll feel different when shit is like back to normal and I'll really feel that spark. Kind of like right now, it's kind of back and forth on it.
Sure.
All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, just I miss you. I miss
Miss
Reno.
you too. Amy says to say hi.
Hi, Amy.
Yeah.
You guys take it easy then, I guess, and we'll talk soon.
Well, that's going to do it for the second episode of Every Guitarist Story. I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I welcome your feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how I can make this a better show. If you want to be a guest on the show, please let me know. I'd love to sit down and just talk guitars with you. So until next time, keep on rocking. A quick search shows that these go for about $300 on the internet.